Hello! Let's see if I still remember how to film a YouTube video because I haven't done it in like a month. I do have some exciting updates for you guys today, so without further ado, let's get into what I've been up to for the past month. Apparently I did forget how to film a YouTube video because I totally forgot to introduce myself. My name is Emma, aka Midsummerknits, and let's get into the video. So first of all, let's start with some knitting updates. As you can probably see from this video, I do have a new FO, which is my second heartless top. The heartless top is a design that I've been working on for what feels like forever. I actually first posted about it last year on Valentine's Day, so it's been about a year since I first mentioned this design and showed it to you guys on Instagram, and I've had so many people asking me about what my plans are to release this design, if this pattern is going to be out anytime soon, literally for the past year. So I'm really excited to announce that I'm finally moving forward with getting this design out. Unfortunately, I didn't get around to filming a YouTube video right when I was posting the tester call, so the tester call is now closed, so I'm sorry to anyone who watches my YouTube videos and wanted to apply. But because of that, this top is now in testing, so I am planning to get the design out by May 1st at the latest, maybe a few days earlier depending on how long it takes me to sort of finalize the testing process and wrap up everything. But I'm definitely planning to have it out by May 1st at the latest. So I'm really excited for this. I have been wanting to release a garment design for a super long time. If you guys have been following me on YouTube or on Instagram or anything for any amount of time, you probably know that I have both this design and then I also have the Groovy Tank, which are just garment designs that I have made for myself and have posted about, but have not actually released the patterns for because I feel like the process of grading your designs and getting testers to make it and then putting out the design is a little bit intimidating, so I'm glad that you guys can come along with me on this journey of my first garment design and seeing how that goes. Essentially what happened is that I wrote the pattern for my own size and then I worked with a tech editor to get it graded because I could have done it myself, but I feel like I was just putting off the process of grading because I was so intimidated by it, and eventually I just decided that it would be worth the money to actually pay someone to grade it for me. So the pattern is now in the testing phase. I'm really hoping that things go well, and I'm really excited to see all of my testers make this top. But quickly going back to what I was originally talking about, this is my second version of the heartless top. It is in this really cute light purple color. This is one of my favorite colors of all time, and the first one that I made was in like a bright aggressive red. This one I'm actually debating whether I want to add a little bit more length to it. It is a bit more cropped than my first version, which I feel like the first one that I made was kind of the perfect length. And whenever I make like a second version of my own designs, I feel like I like to prove to myself that the design could be a little bit more versatile by making it a little more cropped, making it a little bit longer, like just kind of switching things up with the design. But with that being said, I was really happy with the length of my first heartless top, so I'm kind of debating if I want to go back and add a little bit more length to this one. I do have a good bit more yarn. This is the yarn I used. It's Dream in Color Classy, which is a worsted weight yarn, but I am recommending that people use a DK weight yarn for this design because I am a little bit of a tighter knitter. And I'm sort of debating if I want to go back and add more length to it. I think that I'm going to block it because I haven't actually blocked this yet and then decide. But I think there is a good chance that I will eventually go back, whether it's soon or in a little bit, and just use up the rest of this yarn and add a little bit more length to it to make it a bit more wearable. I do like cropped tops, like basically all of the tops in my wardrobe are cropped, but I think this one is just a little bit more cropped than I wanted it to turn out. So I'm thinking of doing that. However, all in all, I am really happy with how this came out. I am really excited that all of my testers are starting on making their tops now, and super excited to get this design out. Okay, on to the next FO. I actually have two FOs to show you guys today. My next FO are these socks. They are the embossed leaves socks. I had been working on these since around the end of December. I started these socks when I was visiting my family for Christmas, so I've been waiting to finish these socks for a while. Something that I mentioned in a previous podcast episode is that I always want to have some sort of commute project in progress because I do spend a good bit of my time commuting to my job. I have like a 30-minute commute each way when I go to the office, which I usually do like 4 days a week. So there's definitely a good amount of time that I can be spending just knitting when I'm on the bus or otherwise commuting. And so socks are a really great option for that. And I also love socks because I wear socks a lot, versus I feel like a lot of other types of smaller knitted things that you could knit on a commute, like a hat or mittens or something like that, I just don't really wear very often. I live in the Bay Area and it doesn't get very cold here. So for me, socks are sort of the biggest option in terms of things that I could knit that is a little bit smaller and more portable and I'll actually want to use in the future. So with that being said, I finished these socks. I spent a good amount of time working on them on my commute, but I also spent some time working on them just like at home while I was watching TV or whatever. I think this is a really cute design. I also have not blocked these, and they do have a lace design, so it probably would look a little bit nicer if I did block it and sort of open up that lace a little bit. But I think either way, it looks kind of the same when I'm wearing the socks, and I think it's super cute. It has, as you can tell, this embossed leaf design, and I feel like the actual lace pattern itself was pretty easy to memorize too, so I could get to the point of, after doing a couple repeats of the lace pattern, just basically doing it from my head, from my memory, and then occasionally referencing the chart and making sure that I had the right counts and everything. But that is super nice in terms of a project that you want to do while you're on the go or on some sort of commute, because you don't want to have to always be referencing back to your chart and looking to see where you are on the chart and trying to figure out what you're doing. It's so much nicer if you actually have the pattern memorized. So if you're like me and you like cool, fancy looking socks, this is a great option. Especially, I was looking for something that had some sort of leaf motif because I wanted to use up this yarn. This is Arcane Fiberworks. I forget the name of the color, I will put it on the screen, but it's their 80/20 fingering weight yarn. And I had just been looking for some sort of like leafy motif sock to knit with this yarn. So I'm really happy that I found this design. My mom actually recommended it to me because she had a book that included this design in it, and it had made it in the past. And I just think it turned out super cool. I always love sort of more intricate sock designs that have like cool cables or lace. So this one was right up my alley, and I'm really happy with how they came out. So that is it for finished objects. I am excited that I already have a couple of finished objects in 2024. Next, we can move on to works in progress. And right now I just have one work in progress, but I'm anticipating having at least one more that I will be starting on pretty soon. First, let me show you my current work in progress. I have started on the musselburgh hat. I hope I'm saying that right because I like legitimately embarrassingly don't know how to say it. But this is a pattern by Isolde Teague. She's a very iconic designer, and the cool thing about this pattern is it is very basic. Essentially, the pattern is just a hat that you knit starting from the top down, but then the idea is that the hat is a double layered hat. So you will just continue to knit and then eventually decrease to form basically like a long tube with decreases on either side, and then you will turn one half of it inside out, so it will be a double layered hat. But the cool thing about this design, first of all, it's totally customizable, so you can change the pattern depending on which weight of yarn you have. I believe it's anywhere between fingering to DK weight yarn or something along those lines, which I think is super cool because there's just a lot more options, and you can use it for whatever kind of skein of yarn you have in your stash that you've been wanting to use up. Another thing about this design is that you do not have to purl at all, which is really cool. Again, it is a pretty simple design in terms of how the hat actually looks, but I feel like I'm really okay with that. Like, I don't need every single thing I wear to be a statement. Also, I don't know if I'm gonna keep this for myself. I did make it in just like an adult medium size, so I might give it to one of my friends. I think this would be a good candidate for gifting to a friend because I feel like a basic hat is something that people would potentially wear maybe on like a ski trip or something. So I might give it to one of my friends. But also I am using Arcane Fiberworks for this. I promise this is not sponsored by Arcane Fiberworks, but they did send me some yarn, and so I've been wanting to use the yarn that they sent me for actual projects. I do want to say I think this is a great design for using a hand-dyed yarn because it really does allow the yarn to shine since it's so basic. Obviously, I also think it looks great in a solid color. I've seen a lot of people knit it in just a plain solid color, and I think it looks good in that way too. But with a hand-dyed yarn, sometimes I feel like you do want to err on the side of a little bit of a simpler design so you can just allow the yarn to shine, especially when it has a little bit more variance like this one does. So I think this is a great option for hand-dyed yarn. Also, as I said, this is not sponsored by Arcane Fiberworks, but I do have a 10% off discount. If you guys do want to buy anything from Arcane Fiberworks, I really love their yarn, especially after making a couple of projects with Arcane Fiberworks yarn. I just need to say that I am impressed with their yarn. I really like it. I feel like this is the kind of yarn that I personally come back to over and over again. Just like a really nice wool that is really easy on the hands and fun to knit with. And of course, that has a really nice tonal because it is hand-dyed yarn. I think it is gorgeous. So if you are willing to splurge a little bit on some nice hand-dyed yarn, I would recommend checking out Arcane Fiberworks. That is it for my current FOs and works in progress. Like I said, I do think that I want to start on something new soon. I'm thinking of starting on a garment or two. I actually just bought the yarn to make the Florence polo, which is this really cute short-sleeved polo with a collar. I've been talking about this design for like the longest time and have been saying that I want to make it at least since a year ago because I remember it was in my like summer knitting patterns video that I released around a year ago. So I have been looking at this design for ages, and I finally was just like, I'm just gonna go out there and splurge on the yarn to make this. I got this like ochre yellow color to make the polo in, and I'm really excited to start on that. However, I did also recently apply for a test knit for a garment, so I'm kind of waiting to hear back if I get into that test knit to decide if I want to start on the Florence polo or if I'll be doing that test knit. I do not want to jinx it, but I'm hoping that I get into that test knit because I really want to make that. But otherwise, the musselburgh hat is my only work in progress right now, but I'm definitely going to start on some garment soon, mark my words. To be honest, I totally skipped out this year on making any sweaters or anything with sleeves, which I'm okay with. I think that when it comes to making sweaters, it is just a really long process, and if you're not really mentally prepared to like enter into that process of a couple of months of knitting, then it can be tough. So this year, I had a little bit of a knitting slump and did not get around to making any sweaters or anything, and I think that's okay. I am a little bit more excited for summer knitting and things where I don't have to knit entire long sleeves, so that'll be fun. Okay guys, that is it for my knitting updates. I feel like I yapped a lot, so we'll see how long this video is. I end up saying that in every single podcast episode because I feel like I'm always talking so much, and then the podcast ends up being like a reasonable amount of time, so I'm hoping that'll be the case here again. But that is it for my knitting updates. So the next section of my podcast that I like to do is talking about media that I've been watching and or enjoying while I'm knitting. I don't have too much of an update in terms of media because I have still been watching One Tree Hill. I think I'm on season 5 at this point, so I am getting a little bit closer to the end. I don't think that this is a spoiler, but basically in season 4, all the characters graduated high school, and it felt like a wrap up. I think that the writers for this show potentially thought that the show would no longer be funded, so they sort of wrapped up the show in a way that it could have ended at that point where they all graduated high school. But then with season 5, it's been really interesting because in season 5, instead of sort of going directly to the next year, which would be all of the characters' first years of high school, it actually does a time skip. So it goes to a time when all of them, if they went to college, graduated college, and then they came back to like their original hometown and sort of reconnect, which I think is pretty interesting. It has been unexpected, like I didn't realize that's how the show would go, but I think it's been pretty cool and I've still been enjoying the show. Other media, I have been actually reading again. I feel like I went through a bit of a reading slump, basically at the same time I was going through my knitting slump, so I wasn't really reading too much. So I recently read Fourth Wing, which is a very popular book on TikTok. It is a sci-fi / fantasy book about a world in which there are dragons, and there's a school where 20-year-old students go to the school and learn basically how to ride dragons. It also has a little bit of romance, a little bit of drama thrown in there, so I feel like this is a perfect candidate for a popular book on TikTok. I actually basically read the first book, Fourth Wing, within like the span of 6 hours because I read it mostly on my flight coming home from Virginia. So that was a very quick read. I got through it so quickly, and then I went on to the sequel, which is Iron Flame, I think it's called, and I just had such a slow start to that book. For whatever reason, I got like 2 pages in and I could not get myself to continue. But recently I've gotten back into it and have been enjoying that book. It's a pretty fun fantasy book, so I would recommend it if you are into fantasy or if you're just trying to get into reading. I think it's a pretty fun, fast-paced book, at least the first one is. The second one, I think a lot of people agree with me that it's like not quite as enticing or as interesting as the first book, but I have still been enjoying it. I feel like I've just gotten into more of a pace of reading it more regularly as opposed to reading like the entire book in one sitting, and I've still been enjoying that one. Lastly, for my little knitting YouTube channel shout out, I wanted to give a shout out to my friend Francesca, aka Knits by Francesca. Her username used to be Frankie Girl Designs, so if you've heard that username before or followed her on Instagram, that is her new username, is Knits by Francesca. But she is actually a friend that also lives in the Bay Area, so we've met up a few times in person, and that was super, super fun. But she's recently started getting more into YouTube, and it's been really inspiring to see her posting on YouTube. I feel like she's put a lot of effort into her YouTube videos. She's done a couple of like weekly vlogs. She did this vlog that I really liked where she went to New York and visited a bunch of different yarn stores and reviewed them. And she also did Vlogmas in December where she posted every single day, which is so impressive to me. But I just wanted to say, if you are a knitter and you like watching podcast episodes, you should definitely go check her out. I think she's awesome, and it's super inspiring for me to watch both her knitting and her journey on YouTube. I think she's so freaking cool, so you guys should definitely go check her out and give her some support. That is it for my podcast episode. Like I said, I know it's been a while since I've just sat down and caught up with you guys in terms of what I'm doing, so I would love to hear what you guys have been working on in the year 2024. What have you been knitting? What have your favorite projects been? Have you been struggling with anything? I would love to hear what you're up to. So let me know in the comments below. And thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.